I was still holding the phone to my ear when I realized she was never going to answer. The airport lights blurred into a soft, trembling haze as I stood there on the curb, the night air brushing against my cheeks like a cold reminder that I was alone. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe my channel and listen to my story till the end. My suitcase rested by my feet, its wheels wobbling slightly whenever a car rushed past. Voices echoed everywhere. Joyful reunions, laughter, warm embraces, yet none of them belonged to my daughter. And strangely, it was not the silence that hurt. It was the familiarity of it. "Please pick up, sweetheart," I whispered, even though I already knew better. My voice sounded small, fragile, like an old memory trying to survive in a world that had outgrown it. The call rang, then stopped, then turned into that quiet gray screen that never explains anything, only confirms what the heart already suspects. She had promised she would be here. She had sounded so excited, so loving, so sincere. "Mom, this time I mean it. Come celebrate with us. You deserve it." Those words had wrapped around me like a warm shawl on a winter night. They made me iron every blouse twice, repack my suitcase 3 times, and sit awake the night before the flight imagining what it might feel like to finally be wanted. But standing there under the pale glow of the terminal lights, I felt something inside me shift. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, heartbreaking click, like a door softly closing after years of being left open. I looked around, searching every white SUV that slowed near the curb. Each time one pulled up, hope fluttered, then collapsed gently without protest. I smiled at strangers greeting their loved ones, as if I had been invited to watch happiness from the outside, but never to touch it. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification, but not from her. It was a video. I tapped it slowly, carefully, the way you touch something you already know will hurt but cannot stop yourself from feeling. Golden lights. Music. Laughter. My daughter, my little girl. Swirling beneath string lights at a vineyard. Glass in hand, joy spilling out of her like sunshine. Her voice rang through the speakers, bright, careless, full of life. "Here's to us. Girls' weekend. No kids, no parents, no stress. No parents." The people in the video cheered. Someone wrapped an arm around her. She laughed. That same laugh I once rocked to sleep against my chest when the world scared her. And I stood outside an airport alone, dressed in the soft blue dress I had chosen so she would be proud to be seen with me. A single thought settled quietly inside my heart. Not sharp, not angry, just painfully honest. I had not been forgotten. I had been excluded, and somehow that was worse. I closed the video. I folded my hands so they would stop trembling. And I told myself, the way old mothers teach themselves to survive disappointment. Do not cry. Not here. Not yet. Because deep down I already knew. This was not the first time she had left me waiting. It was only the first time I had finally seen it for what it truly was. But that night, before the darkness settled, before the truth fully revealed itself, my daughter would speak a single word that shattered everything I thought I knew about love and motherhood. I did not cry. Not then. Not while I stood beneath the humming airport lights with strangers rushing past, and the night sky stretching endlessly above me. Instead, I did what mothers like me have learned to do across a lifetime of small heartbreaks. I steadied my breath, straightened my shoulders, and pretended I was fine. A taxi slowed beside me, the driver leaning out the window. "You need a ride, ma'am?" His voice was gentle. Too gentle. The kind reserved for people who look like they might fall apart if someone speaks too loudly. "Yes," I said softly. "I suppose I do." I slid into the back seat, the leather cold against my palms. The city lights blurred past the window, neon signs, fast food restaurants, billboards, flashing faces full of smiles. The world outside felt loud and alive, while something inside me grew incredibly still. I had imagined this car ride differently. In my mind, my daughter and I would have been sitting together laughing about airport food, her hand resting briefly on mine while she said, "Mom, I'm so glad you're here." Instead, the seat beside me was empty. The driver adjusted his mirror. "First time visiting?" "No," I replied gently. "Just a different kind of visit than I expected." He nodded, as if he understood more than I had said. Silence filled the car. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet where the heart finally hears itself. And mine was tired. As we drove, memories drifted through my mind, soft, fragile things. The first day I held her tiny body against my chest. The nights I stayed awake beside her fevered forehead. The school recitals where she searched the crowd until she found my smile. Back then she used to reach for me. Back then love did not feel like a guessing game. The driver turned onto a wide tree-lined street. Houses glowed softly through curtained windows, warm light, warm homes, warm families. I wondered how many mothers inside those walls were also learning what it meant to be needed, only when convenient. We stopped outside her neighborhood. The same one I had seen in photos. Trimmed lawns, polished sidewalks, pretty porches lined with potted flowers. "Are you sure this is the address?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm sure." Because I had memorized it, every digit, every turn, the way lonely hearts memorize things that matter more to them than they should. I paid the fare, thanked him for his kindness, and stepped out into the quiet suburban night. My suitcase rolled softly across the pavement as I walked toward her house. The house where I imagined laughter waiting for me. A hug at the door, my name spoken with love. But when I reached the doorstep, I saw it. A small envelope taped to the door. My name written in her handwriting. Mom. Just that. 2 letters and an ocean of distance. My fingers trembled as I peeled it free. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. For a moment I closed my eyes, not out of fear, but out of grief for what I already knew I was about to learn. Because children may outgrow many things, but a mother never stops recognizing the sound of being left behind. And when I opened that envelope, I discovered the truth she had been avoiding for years. A truth that would change everything I thought I knew about my place in her life. I stood there on her porch for a moment, my hand resting on the envelope as if it were something fragile, something alive. The porch light flickered above me, washing the steps in a pale yellow glow. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A sprinkler clicked on. Small, ordinary sounds, the kind that exist in worlds where hearts are not breaking. I slid my finger beneath the seal and opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, crisp, smooth, carefully written. She had taken her time with this. I unfolded it slowly, my breath catching in my throat. Mom, it began. Just that one word, simple, familiar, yet in that moment it felt strangely distant. As if it no longer belonged to me. I read on. She wrote about being busy, about work and stress, and how this weekend had been planned for a long time. She said she wished she could be here, that she hated the timing, that she hoped I understood. But buried beneath those careful words was the sentence that took the air from my lungs. I think it might be better for both of us if we keep some distance for a while. Distance. For a while. There it was. Not shouted. Not cruel. Not loud. Soft. Polite. Gentle. The kind of kindness that still cuts. I felt my fingers tremble as I went on reading. She wrote about space. About boundaries. About how she needed time to focus on her own life. She said she loved me, but the word looked strange trapped on that page. Small, flickering, almost apologetic, like a candle struggling in the wind. And then, a sentence that pierced straight through the years between us. Sometimes being around you makes me feel like I'm still responsible for your feelings, and I can't carry that anymore. I leaned back against the door, the wood pressing into my spine, my heart echoing in the quiet night. Responsible for my feelings. I closed my eyes and memories flooded in. The divorce. The nights I cried into pillows so quietly the world would not hear. The mornings I stitched myself together so she would not see the cracks. I thought I had spared her. But perhaps she saw more than I realized. Perhaps the weight I carried, pressed against her shoulders without meaning to. That realization did not anger me. It broke me gently like an old photograph fading at the edges. I pressed the letter against my chest. For a moment I wanted to knock on that door, to demand an explanation, a conversation, a chance to be understood. But the house was dark. Lights off, curtains still. And I knew deep down she wasn't there. She had made sure of it. A mother learns many truths slowly, then all at once. And the truth I learned on that porch was this. Love does not always disappear loudly. Sometimes it simply closes the door. I folded the letter carefully, as though it were a fragile relic from a life that no longer belonged to me. I slipped it back into the envelope and held it tightly, like a small goodbye I had not agreed to but was being asked to accept. The night felt colder then. Not because of the wind, but because something warm inside me had begun to fade. But what I did next, the choice I made on that silent porch, would awaken a memory I had buried decades ago, and force me to confront a truth about myself I had spent my whole life avoiding. For a long moment, I simply stood there, holding that envelope as if it were a fragile piece of my life I was afraid to drop. The quiet street stretched out before me, peaceful, untouched, unaware that a mother's heart was breaking quietly on a front porch no one would remember. I could have knocked. I could have called. I could have begged for an explanation the way younger versions of me once begged people to stay. But somewhere deep inside, a small, steady voice whispered, "No more. Not this time." I set the envelope gently into my purse, wiped my palms against my dress, and lifted my suitcase handle. The wheels rolled softly down the front path. A sound so small, yet it felt like the echo of closing years behind me. I did not know where I was going, only that I could not stay where love no longer wished to open the door. The night wrapped around me like a quiet companion. A street lamp flickered overhead. The air smelled faintly of flowers watered earlier that evening. Somewhere, someone laughed inside a nearby house. A warm, distant sound that belonged to another life. And as I walked, an old memory rose up from a place inside me I thought I had sealed away forever. Another door. Another night. Another version of me. I was younger then, not yet a mother, not yet worn by years of learning how to be strong for others at the cost of myself. I stood outside my own mother's house, suitcase in hand, heart pounding in my chest. We had argued. No, she had argued. Sharp words, heavy expectations, love tangled with control. I had wanted to leave. She had wanted me to stay. Neither of us truly understood the other. And I remembered the way she looked at me that night. Not angry, not bitter, just quietly afraid of being left behind. I had walked away anyway. Back then I called it independence. But years later, standing under those suburban streetlights with a suitcase at my side, I finally understood the face my mother had worn that night, the mixture of sorrow, pride, and the ache of being someone a child grows away from. Life has a way of circling back to our unlearned lessons. Sometimes gently, sometimes painfully. I stopped walking and pressed my hand over my heart, not to steady it but to acknowledge it. For the first time I did not tell myself to be strong. I did not scold myself for feeling too much. Instead, I allowed the grief to exist. A quiet, trembling sadness, not angry, not loud, only human. A mother who had loved, who had tried, who had made mistakes, who had carried too much, and who at last was beginning to see herself through honest, compassionate eyes. A tear slid down my cheek and I did not hide it, because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is finally stop pretending she is not hurt. I took a deep breath, slow, careful, steady, and for the first time that night, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. Not why didn't she choose me, but when was the last time I chose myself? And that question, soft, fragile, terrifying, followed me into the darkness as I walked away from the house that no longer had room for me. But before the night was over, I would discover someone who had been waiting for me all along. And the conversation we shared would force me to confront a truth about love I had never dared to face before. I walked until the sidewalks turned unfamiliar, until the houses grew quieter, the streetlights fewer, and the night wrapped itself around me like an old shawl I had worn many winters before. The wheels of my suitcase rattled softly against the pavement, echoing through the still air like a lonely rhythm only my heart understood. I did not have a destination, only distance. Distance from the porch where love had asked me to step aside. I stopped beside a small park, a wooden bench beneath a tall oak tree, its branches swaying gently against the midnight sky. I sat down slowly, resting my suitcase beside me, my hands clasped in my lap the way I used to sit during church service when I was a girl, quiet, composed, hurting. The world around me felt suspended. Crickets hummed. A breeze brushed past. A distant train horn sang through the silence. For a moment, I let the stillness hold me. And then footsteps. Soft, uncertain, approaching slowly. I lifted my head. A woman stood a few steps away, her silhouette framed beneath the dim glow of the street lamp. She was older too, hair streaked with silver, shoulders wrapped in a shawl, eyes kind yet tired. She studied me gently, as if recognizing a grief she had worn herself once. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. The question was simple, but my heart hesitated. For years I had lived my life behind polite smiles and practiced strength, the kind of strength women our age are praised for, even when it costs us pieces of our soul. Yes, I started to say. But for the first time in a very long time, I did not lie. No, I whispered instead. I'm not. She nodded, not surprised, only understanding. Without asking permission, she sat beside me. Not close, not intrusive, just near enough that I did not feel alone. My name is Helen, she said gently. I come to this bench when my heart feels heavy. Her words settled over me like warm tea on a cold night. I hesitated, then spoke. My daughter lives nearby, I said quietly. Or at least her house does. Something flickered in Helen's eyes, recognition, empathy. A wound she too once carried. I had a daughter once, she whispered. Or rather, I used to be a part of her life. The breeze paused between us. We did not rush our words. We let them breathe. What happened? I asked. She smiled a sad, patient smile, the kind that belongs to women who have learned to live with unanswered questions. She grew up, Helen said. And somewhere along the way, I stopped fitting into the life she was building. Her voice did not tremble, yet every syllable carried years. We sat there quietly, two mothers beneath a night sky that seemed to sigh with us. No dramatics, no bitterness, just truth. The hardest part, Helen continued softly, was realizing that love does not always leave because it stops caring. Sometimes, it leaves because it no longer knows how to stay. Her words rested gently inside me, not as a comfort, but as a mirror. And for the first time I was not afraid to see my reflection. We did not talk about blame. We did not talk about right or wrong. We talked about love. Its beauty, its flaws, its quiet ways of breaking. And sitting there beside a stranger who understood my silence better than most people understood my words, I felt less alone. The night air grew colder, yet something inside me warmed. Not healed, not mended, simply acknowledged. And sometimes acknowledgement is the first doorway back to oneself. Helen rose from the bench, pressing a gentle hand to my shoulder. Whatever brought you here, she said softly, you will survive it. But do not disappear inside it. Then she paused. And in the faint glow of that lonely street lamp, she spoke a sentence I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Do not forget, she whispered, that a mother is still a woman, and she deserves to be loved too. She walked away slowly, her steps fading into the night. Yet her words remained behind, resting inside my chest like a small flickering light. For the first time that evening, I felt the beginning of something I had not felt in years. Not joy, not relief, but self-awareness, a quiet awakening, a gentle shift, a fragile return to myself. I lifted my suitcase again, and for the first time that night, I did not walk away from something. I walked toward whatever waited for me next. But the next place I went, the person I chose to face after that conversation, would finally unearth the secret I had spent decades burying, and reveal why my daughter had truly pulled away from me. I did not walk far, only enough for the night air to steady my breath and for Helen's words to settle quietly inside my chest. There was a softness in them and a weight, the kind of truth that does not shout or accuse. It simply waits for you to be ready to receive it. And as I stood beneath the dim glow of another street lamp, suitcase at my side, I realized there was only one place left for me to go. Not to a hotel, not to a relative, not to anywhere safe or comfortable, but to the place I had avoided for years. The house where my story had begun long before my daughter ever learned to pull away from me. My ex-husband's house. I had his number still, tucked inside my phone like an old scar you forget about until something brushes against it. We had not spoken much over the years. Birthdays, the occasional holiday greeting. Polite, distant, neutral, the kind of peace two people build after the storm has already destroyed everything between them. But he had always said, if you ever need anything, call. And tonight, I needed something. Not rescue, not comfort, just a place to exist without being unwanted. My fingers hovered above his name for a moment. I hesitated, not because I feared rejection, but because calling him meant stepping back into a version of my life I had spent years trying to outgrow. Still, I pressed the button. The phone rang only once. Hello. His voice was older, slower, lined with time and quiet regret. But I knew it instantly, the way you recognize the echo of a life you once lived inside. It's me, I said softly. Silence. Then a gentle breath. Are you all right? It was strange how quickly he sensed the truth. As if even after all those years apart, he still knew the sound of me holding back tears. I'm nearby, I whispered. I don't have anywhere to go tonight. He did not ask questions. He did not hesitate. Come here, he said quietly. Please. The word please settled deep inside my chest. Not romantic, not sentimental, simply human. A kindness I had not realized I still needed. When I reached his house, the porch light was already on. The same house we once shared, though now it carried different furniture, different memories, a different silence. He opened the door slowly, and for a moment we simply looked at each other. Two people who had loved once, hurt each other, grown apart, and yet somehow still understood the language of one another's pain. You look tired, he said softly. I am, I replied, and there was no pride in my voice, no armor, no pretense of strength, only honesty. He helped me bring my suitcase inside. The house smelled faintly of coffee and old books. A lamp glowed in the corner of the living room. It felt familiar and foreign all at once. We sat across from each other. Not close, not distant, just far enough for time to sit between us. Neither of us spoke right away. We let the silence breathe. Then gently he asked, Is this about her? He did not say our daughter's name. He did not need to. I nodded. Something fragile passed through his eyes. Not surprise, not judgment, just a quiet sorrow I recognized too well. I always knew this day might come, he said softly. His words unsettled me, like a door I had kept locked suddenly creaking open on its own. What do you mean? I whispered. He looked down at his hands, older now, lined and weathered, and his voice shifted, not sharp, not cold, only honest. She has been pulling away for years, he said. Not because she stopped loving you, but because there are things she never knew how to say to you. My chest tightened. A memory rippled beneath the surface, quiet, restrained, waiting. Things about what? He lifted his eyes to mine, and in that moment, I saw it. The truth. The one I had spent decades burying beneath strength and silence and unspoken apologies. He took a slow breath, and when he finally spoke, his words did not accuse me. They simply opened the door I had spent half my life pretending did not exist. Because before the night was over, he would remind me of the one moment, the one choice, that had changed my daughter's heart forever, and it was a moment I had sworn I would never speak of again. He leaned back in his chair, the lamplight tracing soft shadows across his face. For a moment he did not speak, and I could see it in his eyes. He was choosing his words carefully, the way people do when the truth is heavy and fragile at the same time. You remember that winter, he said slowly, the year she turned 12. My breath caught in my chest. Yes, I remembered. Before he even finished the sentence, the memory rose inside me like a tide I had spent years forcing beneath the surface. A cold winter, frosted windows, silence in the house thick as fog, and a little girl standing in the hallway, watching two adults drown in a storm they never meant for her to see. He continued softly. She came to me that night, he said. After the shouting, after you locked yourself in the bedroom, she sat on the kitchen floor and cried. The room went still. My hands trembled in my lap. I wanted to interrupt, to defend myself, to say I was hurting, I was scared, I was doing my best. But the older I have grown, the more I've learned that explanations do not erase impact. I did not speak. I listened. She wasn't angry, he continued. She was afraid. She thought if she said the wrong thing, you would break. His voice softened, not judgmental, only deeply, painfully human. She started carrying you long before she was old enough to carry herself. Those words struck deeper than any accusation ever could. Not cruel, not bitter, just true. A memory flickered in my mind, my daughter's small hands pressing against the bedroom door, whispering, Mom, please come out. Please don't cry. I'll be good. I remembered sitting on the other side of that door, holding my own sadness like a drowning woman clings to driftwood, and believing silence was strength, believing I was protecting her by not letting her see how shattered I was. But she saw. Children always see. My ex-husband went on, his voice low and steady. She grew into a woman who never stopped feeling responsible for your emotions, even when she moved away, even when she had a family of her own. His words did not cut me. They did not accuse me. They revealed me. And in that revelation, I felt both grief and compassion staring at each other inside my chest. Because I did not hurt her out of cruelty. I hurt her because I did not know how to love myself back then. I spoke at last, my voice small, trembling, honest. I never meant for her to feel that way. I know, he whispered. But the heart doesn't measure intentions. It remembers weight. Silence filled the room, gentle, overwhelming, and necessary. I closed my eyes and saw my life not as I had lived it, but as my daughter had experienced it. Not a mother who failed. A woman who was wounded, and loved through her wounds. I pressed my hand over my chest, not to hold back tears but to honor them, because sometimes the most painful truths are also the most freeing. I was not a villain. I was not innocent. I was human, and at last, I was willing to see myself clearly. He looked at me, his voice quiet, compassionate, unguarded. She did not walk away from you because she stopped loving you, he said. She walked away because loving you had become a weight she did not know how to carry anymore. The words did not break me. They opened me. For the first time in my life, I felt the ache of my daughter's heart alongside my own, not as a wound inflicted upon me, but as a wound we both inherited. I wiped my tears gently, and in that moment something inside me shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. A quiet, humble willingness to listen to my past without running from it, to face the woman I once was, so I could finally become the woman my daughter needed me to be now. But the next words he spoke, the truth he had promised my daughter he would never tell me, would reveal the moment my fate was sealed, and why she had chosen distance not out of anger but out of survival. He lowered his gaze, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug, as if the memory itself was something fragile he was afraid to drop. There was another night, he said quietly. Years later. She was 20, home from college for the weekend. My breath tightened because I already felt the memory waking inside me, like a door in an old house creaking open on its own. He continued gently. You had been struggling again, trying to hold everything together, trying to be strong. But you were carrying more than anyone could see. I remembered that season, the loneliness, the long empty evenings, the way silence wrapped around the house like winter frost. And the way I thought hiding my pain made me brave. He went on. She came home late that night. She heard you crying in the kitchen. She stood in the hallway, just watching you. Watching me. A mother crying at a table meant for two. I swallowed hard. What did she do? I whispered. He looked at me, and his eyes softened in a way that told me what came next still lived inside him too. She didn't go to you, he said. She turned around, and went to bed. The words fell softly between us. Not loud, not harsh, just devastating in their quiet truth. Because I understood instantly what that moment meant. It was the first time my daughter had chosen not to carry me. The first time she had chosen herself. He continued softly. She lay awake for hours. I found her the next morning sitting on the porch. She told me, he paused, his voice breaking just enough to reveal the years between then and now. She said, Dad, if I go to her, she will lean on me again. And I will never learn how to breathe for myself. My hands trembled in my lap. Not because she had walked away from me, but because I finally understood why. She wasn't abandoning me. She was unburdening herself. For years, I had mistaken her silence for rejection. But in truth, it had been survival. I closed my eyes and a memory surfaced, the younger version of myself, standing in my own mother's kitchen, tears falling silently onto my hands, and the moment I chose not to reach for her either. History does not disappear. It repeats itself quietly, until someone decides to stop bleeding for everyone else. A tear slid down my cheek, not from shame, not from guilt, but from a new painful kind of compassion. The kind that comes when you finally understand the cost someone paid loving you. I never wanted her to feel like my caretaker, I whispered. I know, he said gently. But love that grows inside wounds does not know the difference between closeness and responsibility. We sat in silence. No blame. No anger. Only truth. For the first time, I did not see myself as the mother who had been abandoned. I saw myself as a woman who had been hurting, and a daughter who had carried that hurt far longer than she ever should have. I pressed my hand over my heart, not to protect it, but to accept it, because healing does not begin when you are forgiven. It begins when you finally understand. A stillness filled the room, a quiet, humbling peace. Then he looked at me, slowly, gently, and spoke the words that would change the direction of my life forever. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you, he said softly. She stepped away because it was the only way she could learn how to live. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I let go of the story where I was the one who had been wronged, and I opened my heart to the story where we had both been hurting together. But the next morning, I made a decision, one that would bring me face to face with my daughter again, and the words I chose to say to her would determine whether our story would finally heal or close forever. I did not sleep that night. I lay on the small guest room bed, staring at the ceiling while the house breathed softly around me. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of wind against the window, the old clock ticking in the hallway like a heart that refused to stop remembering. My thoughts moved gently, but they did not wander. They stayed with my daughter. Not the woman who had written that letter. Not the stranger who had chosen distance. But the little girl who once pressed drawings into my hands and said, "Look, Mommy, I made this for you." I saw her in every age at once. 5 years old, tangled hair and sticky fingers. 12, standing brave in the doorway while her world shook. 20, lying awake choosing silence, so she could finally breathe. I did not feel anger. I did not feel abandonment. I felt grief, yes, but woven gently inside that grief was understanding. And understanding, I have learned, is not loud. It is soft. It is humbling. It is the doorway to love. Finally honest and unburdened. Morning light crept through the curtains, pale, tender, almost apologetic. I sat up slowly, wrapped my shawl around my shoulders, and held my phone in my hands. For years, every message I ever sent her had carried the same quiet plea hidden inside it. Please choose me. But that morning, for the first time, I did not want to be chosen. I wanted to free her. My fingers trembled as I opened our conversation thread. So many short sentences, careful emojis, polite check-ins that never said what either of us was truly feeling. I began to type, then stopped, deleted, started again, stopped, because this message could not sound like fear, could not sound like guilt. It could not sound like a wound asking to be bandaged. It had to sound like love that finally understood. I took a deep breath and let my heart speak gently. My sweet girl, you do not need to carry me anymore. I see now that I asked more of your heart than I ever meant to. If distance is what you need to feel safe, I will honor it, not as rejection but as courage. I love you, not because you stay close, not because you choose me. I love you simply because you are my daughter. I paused, tears resting quietly at the edge of my eyes. Then I added one more line. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here. Not as a weight on your shoulders, but as a mother learning how to stand on her own at last. My thumb hovered for a moment, not out of doubt, out of reverence, because some words are not sent to be answered. They are sent to release the past. I pressed send. The message left my phone, disappearing into that invisible space where hope and uncertainty live side by side. I set the phone on the nightstand and folded my hands in my lap. And for the first time in years, I did not wait for her reply. I did not pace. I did not rehearse apologies. I did not beg fate to turn back time. I simply sat there, still, quiet, present, and allowed the truth of my life to exist without judgment. I was a mother who had tried. I was a woman who had hurt. I was a soul who had finally learned to look at herself with tenderness. And somehow, that realization did not feel like loss. It felt like the beginning of forgiveness. Not hers. Mine. The house remained silent. The clock continued ticking. And somewhere deep inside my chest, A new kind of courage began to breathe. But hours later, when my phone finally lit up with her name, the words she sent were nothing I expected, and what she asked of me next would lead us back to the very place where the story began. The phone buzzed beside me, a single vibration that seemed to echo through the quiet room like a small bell calling my heart back into the present moment. Her name glowed across the screen. For a moment I simply looked at it, not with fear, not with desperate hope, just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when you know that whatever waits on the other side of those words, you are finally strong enough to face it. I opened the message. There were no explanations, no defenses, no carefully measured sentences meant to soften the truth. Just a single line. Mom, can you meet me? My breath caught, not from shock but from something softer, something fragile, something that felt like a door gently unlocking somewhere inside the past. I typed only one word in return. Yes. No time. No questions. No conditions. Because this meeting was not about answers. It was about presence. A quiet, trembling step toward one another. After years of walking in opposite directions, she sent an address. And when I saw where it was, my heart folded into itself. The airport. The same curb where I had stood waiting, wounded, unaware. The place where the story had opened like a wound. Now, it would call us back like a circle closing. I dressed slowly, not to impress her, not to appear composed, but to honor the woman I had finally learned to be. Not a fragile heart asking to be rescued. A mother standing on her own feet. A woman meeting her daughter, not from longing but from truth. My ex-husband drove me. He did not speak much, only rested a gentle hand on the steering wheel and glanced at me every so often with quiet reassurance. When we reached the terminal, the world felt different than it had the night before. The same rushing crowds, the same rolling suitcases, the same sliding doors breathing bursts of air across the pavement. But something within me had changed. I stepped out of the car and stood there beneath the pale sky, the wind brushing softly against my face, as if the morning itself was whispering, breathe. And then, I saw her. She stood near the curb, hands folded, head slightly bowed, not confident, not distant, not armored in the strength she had learned to wear like a shield. She looked human, like me. Her eyes found mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Years lived inside that silence. Childhood, arguments, unspoken love, unshared loneliness. All of it, standing between us. And yet, there was a softness there. Small, hesitant, trembling, like the first light of morning filtering gently through a curtain. I took one step forward, then another. She did too. We stopped an arm's length apart, not embracing, not reaching, just existing together in the ache and the beauty of the space between us. Her lips trembled. Mom, she whispered. Just that. Not heavy, not distant, not burdened. A word spoken not from obligation, but from longing. My eyes filled not with pain, not with guilt, but with love finally free enough to feel everything at once. I got your message, she said softly. I read it again and again. I nodded, not rushing her, not rescuing her, not asking for anything. I simply listened. Her voice shook. I didn't pull away because I stopped loving you, she whispered. I pulled away because, every time I came close, I forgot how to be myself. Her honesty didn't wound me. It honored me. Because truth spoken gently is never an attack. It is a bridge. I know, I said softly. And I'm sorry. Not for who I was, but for the weight I didn't realize I placed in your hands. She closed her eyes and for the first time, I saw relief in her. Not because I took responsibility, but because I no longer asked her to carry the past alone. The wind brushed past us. People hurried around us. But in that small corner of the world, time stood still. She took a breath, slow, uncertain, brave. Can we take this slowly? She asked. Not as who we were. Not as who we're afraid of becoming. Just two women learning how to love each other in a different way. Her words trembled against the morning air. Not a reconciliation. Not a promise. An invitation. A beginning. I smiled through my tears. A gentle, grateful smile. That came not from victory, but from acceptance. Yes, I whispered. Slow is enough. Slow is honest. Slow is love. Our hands did not rush to meet. Our arms did not rush to hold. But something deeper leaned toward the light. And for the first time, the girl who once carried me, and the woman who once lived through her wounds, stood side by side, neither saving, neither pleading, neither disappearing, simply becoming. But as we stood there beneath the pale morning sky, she told me there was one more thing I needed to hear, a truth she had never spoken aloud, and what she confessed next would bring us face to face with the very heart of our story. We stood there quietly for a moment, two women breathing in the same fragile morning, our hearts learning how to speak without breaking. The world around us moved like water. Cars pulling in, suitcases rolling, people greeting one another with joy and noise and hurry. But our moment was still, soft, unrushed, holy. She swallowed gently, her hands trembling at her sides. "There's something I've never told you," she said, her voice thin, careful, almost afraid of the sound of its own honesty. "And I think I've been carrying it my whole life." I nodded, not to hurry her, not to ease her discomfort, but to say I am here. I will listen. Her eyes glistened. "When I was little," she whispered, "I used to believe that if I stayed close enough to you, if I kept you happy enough, then nothing bad would ever happen to us." Her voice shook, fragile, trembling with old echoes. "I thought my love was supposed to protect you." Oh, my heart ached, not with guilt, but with a grief so tender I could barely hold it. She took a shaky breath. "And when I grew up, I didn't know how to stop doing that. Every time you were sad, every time you were lonely, something inside me felt responsible." Her eyes lowered, not in shame but in sorrow. "I didn't leave to punish you, Mom," she said softly. "I left because if I didn't, I was afraid I would lose myself trying to keep you whole." I felt the tears rise, quiet, steady, like a tide that did not ask permission. Not because she blamed me, but because she trusted me enough to tell the truth. I stepped closer, just a little, close enough that our breaths met in the thin space between us. "My sweet girl," I whispered, my voice trembling with tenderness, "you were never meant to hold me together." The words came from somewhere deeper than memory, deeper than regret, deeper than time. "They told me once," I continued softly, "that a mother is still a woman, and she deserves to be loved too." I paused. "But I forgot something." She lifted her eyes, curious, fragile, listening. "A daughter," I said gently, "is still a child inside even when the world calls her grown. And she deserves to be free." She covered her mouth as tears spilled quietly down her cheeks. "Not dramatic, not loud, human," she whispered through trembling breath. "I didn't want to lose you." And I finally understood. For all the years I believed I had been abandoned, she had been afraid of disappearing too. I reached a hand forward slowly, carefully, asking permission without words. She hesitated for just a second, then placed her hand into mine. Not to carry me, not to save me, but to meet me, woman to woman, daughter to mother, heart to heart. Our fingers intertwined not as chains, as release. We stood there beneath that pale morning sky, holding every version of us inside that single touch. The child who once reached for me, the woman who once stepped away, and the mother who finally learned how to stand. The past did not vanish. It softened. It breathed. It forgave us both for being human. We did not rush toward a happy ending. We simply allowed the truth to rest between us, gentle, honest, alive. And for the first time in our lives, love did not feel like a weight, felt like a choice, a beginning, a quiet, fragile promise. But before we walked away from that curb, she asked me one final question, a question that would carry us back to the very first moment of the story and reveal whether our hearts were truly ready to heal together. We stood there hand in hand beneath the soft morning sky, our hearts no longer running from the past, only learning how to breathe inside it. The airport noise faded into something distant and harmless, like waves breaking far beyond the shore. For the first time, there was no fear of what might be said next. Only truth, only love, finally unburdened. She took a slow breath, her fingers tightening gently around mine, not with dependence but with presence. "Mom," she whispered, her voice fragile and steady all at once, "can I ask you something?" I nodded, not as a woman bracing for pain, but as a mother finally ready to listen. Her eyes glistened, soft, uncertain, human. If one day, she said quietly, I stumble the way you did, if life breaks me in ways I don't expect, will you promise not to let me carry you, and not to carry me either? Her voice trembled. Will you promise that we'll both stay standing on our own feet, even if we have to stand close to one another while we learn? Oh, my heart swelled, not with sorrow but with a tenderness so full it felt like light, because this was not rejection. This was love asking to exist without sacrifice. Love asking to live as two whole women side by side. I squeezed her hand gently. I promise, I whispered. From this day forward, I will not ask you to be my strength, and I will not disappear trying to be yours. Her tears fell softly, not breaking her, freeing her, and mine followed, not from regret, but from grace. We stood there in silence, not the silence of distance, but the silence of peace. The circle had finally closed. The porch, the envelope, the unanswered phone call, the night I believed I was unwanted, none of it vanished. It transformed. It became a doorway instead of a wall, a lesson instead of a wound. She stepped forward, slowly, carefully, and for the first time in years she rested her forehead against my shoulder. Not as a child seeking shelter, not as a woman forced to be strong, but as a daughter, still my daughter, choosing closeness, not obligation. Her voice trembled against my chest. Mom, she whispered, softly, reverently, truthfully. It was the same word she had spoken the night before, but this time, it did not sound like habit. It did not sound like duty. It sounded like love born again through honesty. I held her gently, not tightly, not desperately, just enough. Enough to say, I see you. I honor you. I will not lean my life onto your shoulders again. The morning wind wrapped around us like a quiet blessing, and in that fragile, beautiful stillness, I finally understood something I should have learned long ago. Motherhood is not a burden our daughters must inherit. It is a love we must learn to carry within ourselves first, so that when they reach for us, it is not out of responsibility, but out of choice. We stepped back, not apart, only enough to see one another clearly. Two women, two hearts, two lives, still learning, still human, still worthy of love. She smiled, small, trembling, real. Let's take it slow, she said again. I smiled back. Slow is enough. We turned not toward the past, but toward whatever waited next. And as we walked side by side beneath that pale morning sky, the story did not end. It softened. It healed. It breathed. And for the first time, I did not feel like a woman who had been left behind. I felt like a mother who had finally learned to love without asking to be carried. Sometimes the greatest forgiveness we receive is the one we finally give ourselves. And sometimes the deepest love between a mother and daughter is not found in holding on, but in learning how to stand together without losing ourselves.